Now, some members of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal formed part of actively mobilising for the looting and destruction which took place during the 2021 July civil unrest following the arrest of former President Jacob Zuma. The provincial leaders at the time vowed to take action against perpetrators. We take you, as Newzroom Afrika's Ziyanda Ngcobo has the details around that, taking you live to her now. Ziyanda, a very good morning to you. Accountability was really the operative word. It's a year later. What's happened?
Absolutely, Mpo, and you recall then that panel, that expert panel report had found that the factional battles within the ANC were causing instability in the country. In particular then, the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal had a critical role to play in ensuring that its members were actually calmed down following the arrest of former President Jacob Zuma, and that some of them were actively and openly mobilizing people on social media to loot and to participate in the destruction at the time. And one person who had spoken quite frankly and openly about this is Mdumiseni Ntuli. Mr. Ntuli, you had promised alongside the provincial chairperson, Zigalala, that those ANC members within your ranks would be disciplined. How many have been disciplined? What has happened to them? What has happened to them, rather?
Well, you see, what had happened is that, as we know, there were few comrades that got themselves involved in a public campaign, which, in a way, sought to condone what was happening, or to encourage what was happening. And of course, when we pursue some of them, I think there are two, if not three, comrades that we were able to sit down with them and confirm that this was indeed their social media posts, which were quite unacceptable and wrong in the context that, in a way, they were citing people to act in a particular way. But we felt that because the police had said to us, we are pursuing everybody that is involved in social media, we thought, let's leave that task to the police to pursue it, so that we are not going to be getting involved in what may be called a double jeopardy, where you discipline a member on the basis of a certain allegation, and yet they might be being pursued as well by the state organs. So our view was that let's allow the state organs, because we were told they've identified close to 19 people who were defined as potential perpetrators. So we thought let's allow that process, because in any event, we too had confidence that the state organs are quite much more capable and more efficient than what the ANC will do to its own few members.
But it does then speak to the nature of the politics to a certain extent within the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal. If you have some members not seeing anything wrong with actually encouraging such behavior, but also given the volatility of the politics at the time. So you have the arrest of former President Jacob Zuma. There's an outcome of the church, the Shembe Church. You had the local government elections on the horizon. You, as the ANC yourselves, were quite divided on the issue of the former president. What has changed since then, and in terms of the messaging? Because you, as the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, also did not take a strong stance at the time when this mess was unfolding.
No. We did take a position as a provincial leadership. I mean, if you recall very well, we were very measured about what we thought was wrong and right. For instance, we publicly condemn, firstly, the conduct within the judiciary. You should remember that former President Zuma had made an application for Judge Zondo to recuse himself, which he refused to do. Of course, he quoted certain laws or jurisprudence that justify him proceeding with the case. Our view as the ANC was that position, that posture by the most senior judge in our judiciary was wrong, because there was possibility that somebody could listen to this matter, make a determination, and bring the matter to him to decide how to proceed with it. But we were also very vocal about the fact that, despite the fact that the Chief Justice acted in a way that he did, it would have also been possible for President Zuma to appear before the commission and decide what he wants to answer and what he doesn't want to answer. So in a way, we've taken a position that something terrible wrong has happened, and we we were of the view, and we still are of that view, that what happened in July last year could have been avoided. That it wasn't avoided was because of a failure to act in a way that would clearly have averted the situation that was imminent. Very obvious. It was very clear to many of us that the anger on the ground was palpable. You arrest, you incarcerate, you are going to lead to certain consequences. And we still believe that it was not worth it. The lives of many people that died during that period, almost 400 people passed away, largely because of what happened and the clash between former President Zuma and the Commission of Inquiry. Our view is that it wasn't worth it. We shouldn't have allowed so many lives to be lost on the basis of what was happening there.
So in other words, you're saying you're apportioning a large part of the blame at the feet of the judiciary for making their independent decision to have the former president incarcerated. Is that what you're saying?
It's not necessarily about apportioning a blame to them, but you see, even at the time we said they too had a responsibility to take decisions that are in the best interest of our country. For instance,
what about accountability and the rule of law?
I agree about accountability. But you see, when you have a matter before you are a commission of inquiry, you are a second in command in terms of our judicial leadership. The person with whom you are dealing with has challenged the fact that your legitimacy and your capacity to be objective in the process, and the matter is yet to be heard in one of the senior courts in the Republic of South Africa. You then decide that, no, I'm going to take this matter to the court where I am a leader, where I'm the next in command, and expedite it in whatever way, and even make a recommendation that we want this one to be arrested for so much time, incarcerated for so much time, on the basis of his failure to appear before the Commission of Inquiry. I mean, you and I know that in terms of history of this country, it has never happened that a person would be arrested or for such a long period of time as was prescribed or suggested by the Commission of Inquiry, definitely on behalf of Chief Justice Zondo at the time. So our view was that that on its own incited people. It contributed to this crisis that we ended up having to contend with.
Which you could have tried to quail as the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, as a leader in society, as you always call yourselves.
That's correct. And we did our level best. You know that all of these events were preceded by public calls by the ANC leadership about the need for instance, the national leadership to engage extensively with former President Zuma about his relationship and how he approaches the matters with regard to the Commission of Inquiry, which happened. Unfortunately, we were not part of that meeting, but it was a meeting that originated from our own view. Because we said we live and lead in KwaZulu-Natal. We understand what's happening. We know the environment that we're finding ourselves in. It was a time when, as you would know, the MK members were all over the seat of eThekwini and elsewhere in the province in what was a very nasty battle against foreign nationals. So we knew that the scene has been set to result in a way that is going to be very problematic if, as and when it happens that former President Zuma also gets incarcerated. So when we were making this call, both publicly and internally in the movement, there were not issues that we're raising without understanding the context and the situation that we're confronted with. But we knew that the great likelihood is that we may have to contend with a very destructive situation, which will be very difficult, if not almost impossible, to contain.
Do you think sorry to interrupt you, do you think your national leadership underestimated the influence of the former president in this province after having described all the work that you were doing at the time ahead before he was arrested?
Well, I don't think the national leadership would have underestimated the influence of former President Zuma. I think they know that very well because he has been part of the leadership of the ANC for the past 30 years and more. What I think many of our people, including those in the leadership of the ANC, did not fully anticipate is the extent to which, given the conditions that we find ourselves of, the lockdown that was happening, rising levels of poverty, unemployment and inequality, the extent to which those factors will actually serve as a mobilization source of some sort for people to act in a way that they did. Because as much as people were acting on the basis of unhappiness about what is happening to former President Zuma, but it was also a way to ventilate their major frustrations, which were caused by the lockdown regulations, necessary as they were, but the impact in which they had on the population was quite difficult. So what I think many people, including our leadership, may have not properly anticipated is the extent to which other factors in society will influence the action that will then ensue in case this thing as an event was actually happening.
Very quickly, Mr. Ntuli, what measures have you put in place as a political organization that has been cited as having largely contributed towards a devastating period in this country's history to ensure that it doesn't happen again?
The situation is quite different now. You see, I said publicly at the time a year ago that we had to go out in an environment where essentially we were not allowed to go out because of the lockdown regulations, but we had to force our way out to engage with the structures of the ANC. But the ANC of today is much more better than the ANC of last year. We now have all our elected regional executive committees. We all have our branch executive committees. And a great deal of work has been done to empower them to provide and exercise leadership to society. Because I still maintain what I said in July last year. Had we had a strong, organized, functional, working African National Congress, some of the things that happened could have been avoided. And the evidence is that when we went out and mobilized structures of the ANC to intervene, that intervention is what actually helped us to resolve the situation far more than what the law enforcement agencies were doing.
All right, that's Mdumiseni Ntuli. He is the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal's provincial secretary, reflecting then on the role of this organization in contributing by some of its members towards that July unrest following the arrest of former President Jacob Zuma, but also how now, a year later then, they have organized themselves to the extent that the internal factional battles within this organization no longer cause or trigger the scenes of last year. Mpho?
Very well, Ziyanda, Ngcobo, let's leave it there for now. Of course, as we continue to take stock of the impact of the July unrest and where we're standing as a country today.